All right, so the claim that I'll be responding to states that the biographies of Jesus, or in other words, the New Testament, were handed down to us in a reliable way and thus are accurate in describing Jesus' life. The claims made by the advocate for this argument are that the criteria used by scholars to determine reliability in ancient manuscripts is reliable. The corroboration evidence supports the New Testament writings, and that a wealth and abundance in evidence outlines a clear truth that the New Testament does accurately depict Jesus' life. So the first claim, talking about how scholars use correct methods to determine the ages and dates of the books being recovered that make up the New Testament. The way these books are dated is through carbon dating, which is a scientific procedure. So to use science in an argument where you're being an advocate for religion is confusing in the sense that you have to reject science in other places. If you're going to believe the New Testament, then things like Big Bang Theory and evolution, you kind of have to throw out the window, but at the same time you're relying on carbon dating to identify the times and dates at which events occurred in the New Testament. The second claim, talking mostly about like the writings and who wrote the passages that are being spoken about. There's a heavy reliance in the argument on Josephus, who was a scholar he was born in 37 AD. At this time, the only writings being done were done in imperfect Latin. The language hadn't been fully developed at this point. And then the writings had not been translated until later, much later, the early 17th century by Thomas Lodge, an English writer. So the issue there is, how can you be sure of your accuracy if you're waiting centuries to figure out what the guy was trying to say? The third claim is that an abundance in evidence is a way of stating that it's a clear truth. My issue with this is that the advocate is able to just sort of decide what an abundance is. How much evidence makes it an abundance of evidence? How much do you need to have before it reaches that point? Does the word abundance apply differently to different things being measured? It's just kind of confusing with the way he decided to say that he had a lot of something, I guess. So, in conclusion, my problems with his arguments were the teetering between the use of science and proving the reliability of the New Testament. I thought that there was an over-reliance on writers who had little credibility, and I thought there was some confusion over the advocate's opinion on the abundance of his own evidence. That's it.
Excuse me. All right, organizationally, everything is fine. We got the topic clear, the secondary points laid out pretty well. On the first point, your response is basically about dating and how these scientific techniques are some way incongruent with the text of the Bible. I'm not exactly sure why they're incompatible. That seems to be a presupposition that you're making. It has more to do with a perception issue than it does with reality. And I don't think that you've really advanced an argument on this point that's going to be convincing to anybody. I think it may obscure the issue a little bit, but it's not going to address the issue about the accuracy based on the dating of the information. Now, the second argument on Josephus and the scholarship, I thought that was a little bit more legitimate. You do make a suggestion that the original writings were done in Latin, and the Latin was imperfect at the time. I need some evidence on that. That's your assertion at this particular point. And then later you also make a similar sort of assertion that says that we didn't do translations until the 17th century. That also sounds to me like it's an assertion, and there's probably some evidence on that. I'm assuming you're talking about translations into English. You do need to make an argument that says that the translations matter and that they are important in order to be able to understand things correctly, because let's face it, if the text was understood in Latin and it's still understood in Latin and the Latin is correct from whenever it was originally written to this particular point, there might be a problem with the translations, but that doesn't indicate a problem with the original text, and I think that's the argument that the advocates presenting on this point. And then on your third argument, I do appreciate the press that you're coming up with here on what constitutes an abundance of information or evidence. I think that's a reasonable challenge to make, but your argument would be a lot stronger if you could show, for instance, that there was any criteria on which the advocate's evidence failed to meet any definition of abundance, in which case then we have legitimate grounds for challenging the advocate's conclusion here. I did think that you did a very nice job of summarizing your position at the end, and that helps clarify everything that you're trying to say and gives us one last shot at accepting your point of view on this issue. All right, thank you.